I never thought watching security camera footage could make my blood boil quite like it did that Tuesday morning in February. But there she was, clear as day, walking right up to my front porch and taking my brand new snow pusher like she owned the place. The woman was Sharon Winters, president of the Meadowbrook Heights Homeowners Association in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and she had just made the biggest mistake of her entitled life. Let me back up a bit. My name is Yannick Yarrow, and I had moved into this neighborhood about 8 months prior. The subdivision seemed nice enough when I was house hunting. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, friendly neighbors waving as they walked their dogs. What the real estate agent conveniently forgot to mention was that Meadowbrook Heights had one of the most aggressive HOAs in Kent County. I found that out pretty quickly after closing on my 3-bedroom ranch on Oakmont Drive. The first violation notice came 3 weeks after I moved in. Apparently, my mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Not kidding. The approved color was midnight noir and mine was ebony matte. I had to repaint a perfectly good mailbox because Sharon and her board of busybodies could somehow detect a difference that was invisible to the human eye. The fine for non-compliance was $50 per day, so I repainted the stupid thing. Then came the incident with my garden gnome. I had placed a single, tasteful gnome near my flower bed, only to receive a certified letter informing me that lawn ornaments required prior approval and gnomes were on the prohibited list for being aesthetically inconsistent with community standards. That was a $100 fine I had to pay because I didn't remove it within 48 hours. I had been at a work conference in Chicago and didn't even see the notice in time. The garbage can violation was next. I had left my trash bin visible from the street on a non-collection day. Another $75. Then my grass was apparently 1 inch taller than the maximum allowed height during a week when my mower was in the shop. $50. The fines kept coming, and Sharon kept smiling her fake smile whenever I saw her at community events, acting like she was doing everyone a huge favor by maintaining property values. But I played by the rules after that. I read the entire 47-page HOA covenant document front to back. I measured my grass weekly. I made sure every outdoor light fixture matched the approved list. I even attended the monthly HOA meetings, which were exactly as painful as you would imagine. Watching Sharon and her board members Linda Patterson and Margaret Hughes debate for 20 minutes about whether the community newsletter should be printed on cream or ivory paper. Winter hit Michigan hard that year. By mid-January, we had already received 38 inches of snow, and the forecast showed no signs of letting up. My driveway was a constant battle zone. I had a decent snow blower, but for the front porch and walkway, I needed something more manageable. That's when I invested in a top-of-the-line snow pusher, one of those wide ones with the adjustable handle and steel blade. Cost me $240 at the hardware store, but it was worth every penny. The thing made clearing snow so much easier than a regular shovel, and my back thanked me for it. I kept the snow pusher on my front porch, leaning against the wall next to my door. Convenient for when I needed to clear the walkway and it was out of the way. I had checked the HOA rules, and there was nothing prohibiting tool storage on covered porches. The rules stated that tools could not be prominently displayed in yards or driveways, but porches were specifically exempted as long as items were neatly arranged. My snow pusher was definitely neatly arranged. Then came the morning of February 7th. I woke up to another 6 inches of fresh snow and went to grab my snow pusher to clear the walkway before heading to work. I opened my front door, reached for where I always kept it, and found nothing. Just empty porch. I looked around, thinking maybe the wind had knocked it over, but there was no sign of it anywhere. The snow on my porch was undisturbed except for a single set of footprints leading to my door and back to the driveway. My first thought was that someone had stolen it during the night. Grand Rapids was generally safe, but theft happened everywhere. I was annoyed but figured I would just file a police report and buy a new one. Then I remembered something. 2 months earlier, after the garbage confine, I had installed a Ring doorbell camera. I had actually done it to protect myself from any future HOA violations, wanting video evidence of when I put my trash out and brought it back in. But the camera covered my entire front porch. I pulled up the app on my phone and scrolled back through the footage. I found exactly what I was looking for at 7:32 the previous evening. The video showed Sharon Winters, wearing her puffy purple coat and knit hat, walking right up to my porch. She looked around quickly, grabbed my snow pusher, and walked back to her white Lexus SUV parked on the street. She put it in her back cargo area and drove off. The whole thing took less than 45 seconds. I watched the video 3 more times, making absolutely sure it was her. It was definitely Sharon. I recognized her face, her car, even that ridiculous purple coat she wore to every HOA meeting. The footage was crystal clear, timestamp and everything. The HOA president had just stolen my property and I had her on video. My hands were shaking, not from cold but from pure anger. This woman had been making my life difficult for months with her petty fines and ridiculous rules, and now she had crossed a line into actual criminal activity. I saved the video file and made 2 backup copies, one to my computer and one to cloud storage. Then I sat down to think about my next move. I could call the police right away. Theft was theft and I had clear evidence, but something made me pause. I wanted to know why Sharon had taken my snow pusher. Was this some new HOA overreach? Did she think she had authority to confiscate my property? I decided to confront her first, give her a chance to explain herself, and see how deep this rabbit hole went. Sharon lived 4 streets over on Williamsburg Court, in one of the larger colonials with the professionally landscaped yard. I drove over there around 9 in the morning after I had called into work and told them I would be late. My boss understood. He had his own HOA horror stories. I rang Sharon's doorbell and waited. She answered after a moment, still in her bathrobe, holding a coffee mug that said Queen of Everything. When she saw me, her expression shifted from neutral to that fake pleasant smile she always wore. "Yannick, what a surprise. What can I do for you?" she asked, not inviting me in. "My snow pusher went missing from my porch last night," I said, watching her face carefully. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Her smile did not waver. "Missing? Oh, that's unfortunate. Have you filed a police report?" "Not yet," I said. "I thought I would ask around the neighborhood first, see if anyone saw anything. You know how it is, wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt." "Well, I certainly have not seen anything," Sharon said smoothly. "But you know, Yannick, I have been meaning to talk to you about that snow pusher." Several residents complained that it was an eyesore, visible from the street. The HOA covenants are clear about tool storage. There it was. She was actually trying to justify what she had done. "Sharon, the rules specifically exempt covered porches as long as items are neatly stored." "I checked," I said, keeping my voice level. "The board interprets that rule differently," she replied, her smile tightening. "We sent you a notice about it 2 days ago. When you failed to comply, we exercised our right to remove the violation." "Remove the violation? You mean steal my property?" "Now, Yannick, that's a very hostile way to put it. The item has been temporarily confiscated pending your compliance with HOA regulations. Once you agree to store it in your garage or shed, you can have it back." I could not believe what I was hearing. She actually thought the HOA had the authority to take things from my property. Show me where in the covenants it says you can confiscate homeowner property, I demanded. It's in Section 12, subsection 4, regarding enforcement of violations, Sharon said, sipping her coffee. The board has broad discretion to remedy violations by any means necessary to maintain community standards. That does not give you the right to steal from me, Sharon, and for the record, I never received any notice 2 days ago. The notice was sent. If you did not receive it, that's not our problem. You're responsible for checking your mail. I was done playing nice. I want my snow pusher back right now or I'm calling the police. Sharon's expression hardened. Are you threatening me? Because I should warn you, Yannick, that threatening board members is itself a violation of our harassment policy. That could result in additional fines. This is not a threat. This is me telling you that you committed theft and I have evidence. Return my property now. I don't have time for this, Sharon said, starting to close the door. If you want to file a complaint with the HOA board, you can submit it in writing at our next monthly meeting. Good day. She shut the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. Sharon had basically admitted to taking my snow pusher, claimed it was legitimate HOA enforcement, and refused to return it. This was so far beyond normal HOA overreach that it entered criminal territory. I walked back to my car and called the Grand Rapids Police Department non-emergency line. I explained the situation to the dispatcher, who connected me with an officer who could take my report. Officer David Chen arrived at my house about 45 minutes later. He was a young guy, probably early 30s, and he actually laughed when I explained what happened. HOA took your snow pusher. Man, I have heard a lot of HOA stories, but that's a new one, he said, shaking his head. Let me see this video. I showed him the ring footage on my phone. He watched it twice, taking notes. His expression got more serious as he watched. Yeah, that's definitely theft. Doesn't matter if she's the HOA president or the Pope. She took your property without permission. That's larceny. And since it's worth more than $200, it's actually a misdemeanor in Michigan, could be up to 93 days in jail plus fines. So you'll arrest her? I asked. Well, not immediately. Here's how this works. I'll take your full report and we'll classify this as larceny. I'll go talk to Mrs. Winters and get her side of the story. If she admits to taking it and won't return it, we'll issue her a citation and she'll have to appear in court. If she returns it immediately and this gets resolved, you can decide if you want to press charges or let it go. I want my snow pusher back, but I also want her to face consequences. She's been harassing me and other homeowners for months with these ridiculous fines, I said. Officer Chen nodded. I get it. Let me go talk to her. Give me about an hour and I'll call you back. He left and I waited. I made myself some coffee and tried to do some work from home, but I could not concentrate. I kept checking my phone, refreshing my email, looking out the window. Finally, after about 90 minutes, Officer Chen called. So I talked to Mrs. Winters, he said. She confirmed she took the snow pusher. She claims it was legitimate HOA enforcement and that she was holding it for you until you complied with their rules. I explained that's not how the law works and that what she did constitutes theft. She got pretty upset, said I didn't understand HOA authority and that she would be calling her lawyer. Did she return my snow pusher? No. She refused. She said she's holding it pending HOA board review of your violation. At that point, I issued her a citation for misdemeanor larceny. She has to appear in Grand Rapids 61st District Court in 3 weeks. I also told her that if she doesn't return your property within 48 hours, we could pursue additional charges. What happens now? You have a couple of options. You can wait and see if she returns it in the next 2 days. If not, we can help you file for a civil court order to get it back, or you can just buy a new one and let the criminal case proceed on its own. That's up to you. Either way, she's going to court for the theft charge. I thought about it. I'll wait the 48 hours, but I'm not dropping the charges either way. She needs to learn that being HOA president doesn't put her above the law. I hear you. I'll email you a copy of the police report for your records. If you don't get your property back by Thursday evening, call me directly. He gave me his number. I thanked him and hung up. For the first time all day, I felt like I had some control over the situation. Sharon had messed with the wrong person. Word spread fast in Meadowbrook Heights. By the next morning, at least 5 neighbors had texted or called me asking if it was true that Sharon had been cited by the police for stealing my snow pusher. I confirmed it was true and told them I had video evidence. The neighborhood Facebook group, which normally featured posts about lost cats and recommendations for plumbers, absolutely exploded with discussion. Some people were on my side, saying Sharon had gone too far and that the HOA had been out of control for years. Others defended her, claiming she was just trying to maintain property values and that I was being difficult. One woman, Patricia something or other who lived on my street, posted that she had been the one who complained about my snow pusher and that I should be grateful Sharon was willing to enforce the rules. I responded with a screenshot of the relevant HOA covenant section showing that my storage was compliant. Patricia deleted her post. On Wednesday afternoon, I got an email from the HOA board. It was sent by Margaret Hughes, the board secretary, and it was absolutely unhinged. The email stated that I was being fined $500 for harassment of board members and another $250 for initiating legal action against the HOA without proper authorization. It went on to say that if I did not drop the criminal charges against Sharon and issue a public apology, the fines would increase by $100 per day, and I could face a lien against my property. I forwarded the email to Officer Chen and also to a lawyer I found through a friend's recommendation. His name was Thomas Bradford, and he specialized in HOA disputes. I called his office and managed to get an appointment for the next morning. Thursday morning, I met with Thomas in his office in downtown Grand Rapids. He was an older guy, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and glasses. He had been practicing law for 30 years and had seen his share of HOA nightmares. "Mr. Yarrow, I've reviewed the email you sent me and the police report," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This is one of the more egregious cases I've seen. The HOA has absolutely no authority to confiscate your property, and their threat to fine you for pursuing legal remedies is likely illegal under Michigan law." "Can they actually put a lien on my house?" I asked. "They can try, but these fines they're claiming are completely baseless. An HOA can fine homeowners for legitimate covenant violations, but they cannot fine you for exercising your legal rights. That's called retaliation, and courts do not look kindly on it. If they do place a lien, we can sue to have it removed and likely recover damages. What do you recommend I do?" "First, do not pay any of these bogus fines, not a cent. Second, document everything. Every email, every letter, every interaction with the board. Third, we should send them a formal cease and desist letter, making clear that their actions are illegal and that you will pursue all available legal remedies if they continue. Fourth, we should file a civil suit against Sharon Winters personally and the HOA for conversion, which is the civil equivalent of theft, plus harassment and violation of your property rights." "How much is this going to cost me?" I asked, worried about lawyer fees. My rate is $250 an hour, but here's the good news. In Michigan, if we win an HOA dispute case, the court can order the HOA to pay your attorney fees. Given how clear-cut this is, I'm confident we'll win. I'd estimate this will take maybe 20 to 30 hours of work total, but you'll likely recover all of that. I agreed to hire him. We spent another hour going over the details, and he drafted a cease and desist letter right there. It was 3 pages of legal language basically telling the HOA to back off, return my property, and rescind the bogus fines or face serious legal consequences. He sent it via email and certified mail that afternoon. The 48-hour deadline Officer Chen had given Sharon came and went. She did not return my snow pusher. Thursday evening, I called Officer Chen and let him know. All right, I'll file an additional report noting her failure to return the property. This actually strengthens the criminal case because it shows intent. Most theft cases involve some ambiguity, but she's making it really clear that she took your property and won't give it back, he said. Friday morning, I received a call from Margaret Hughes, the HOA secretary. Her voice was shaking, either from anger or nerves, I could not tell. Yannick, this cease and desist letter your lawyer sent is completely unacceptable. You are tearing this community apart with your refusal to follow simple rules, she said. Margaret, I followed the rules. Sharon stole my property. That's a crime. If you want to make this go away, have her return my snow pusher and drop all these fake fines, I replied. The fines are legitimate and the board stands behind Sharon's actions. We have a duty to enforce the covenants. Then I'll see you in court, both criminal and civil. You're making a huge mistake. The HOA has significant legal resources and we will fight this. Good. I have video evidence and the law on my side. I'll take those odds. She hung up on me. An hour later, I got an email from Linda Patterson, the third board member, with the subject line, Community Harmony. It was a long, rambling message about how the HOA was like a family and families sometimes had disagreements, but needed to work together. She suggested we all meet for a mediation session to resolve this peacefully. I ignored it. The weekend was quiet. I bought a new snow pusher, $50 for a basic one at Home Depot, because we were supposed to get more snow and I needed to keep my walkway clear. The irony was not lost on me. On Monday, Thomas called with an update. I filed the civil complaint this morning. We're suing Sharon Winters for conversion and the HOA for harassment, retaliation, and violation of your property rights. We're asking for return of the snow pusher, compensatory damages of $5,000, punitive damages of $20,000 attorney fees, and an injunction preventing the HOA from further retaliation. Punitive damages. Will we actually get that much? Probably not the full amount, but we ask high to give ourselves negotiating room. The point is to make this painful enough that they think twice before doing this to anyone else. When does this go to court? Civil cases take a while, probably 6 months before we get a trial date. But the criminal case against Sharon is in 3 weeks, and that might change things. If she gets convicted of theft, it becomes much harder for her to defend the civil case. The next 2 weeks were tense. I kept getting emails from the HOA about various alleged violations, clearly retaliatory. My house number was supposedly not visible enough from the street. My driveway had some cracks that needed repair. My mailbox was not clean enough. Each violation came with a threatened fine. I forwarded every email to Thomas, who documented them as evidence of harassment. Other homeowners started reaching out to me privately. Turns out Sharon had been doing this kind of thing for years. A guy named Robert Martinez told me Sharon had once threatened to fine him because his teenage son's car was parked in the driveway overnight, and she claimed it was an unapproved vehicle. A woman named Jennifer Kowalski said Sharon had tried to force her to remove a decorative birdhouse because it was not on the approved list. Story after story of petty tyranny. I suggested we organize. If enough homeowners were fed up with Sharon and the board, we could vote them out at the next annual meeting. Michigan HOA law required annual elections, and board members served one-year terms. The annual meeting was scheduled for April, about 2 months away. If we could get enough people to show up and vote, we could clean house. Robert and Jennifer were immediately on board. We created a private email group and started reaching out to other fed-up homeowners. Within days, we had 37 people interested in attending the annual meeting and voting for new leadership. Meadowbrook Heights had 162 homes, so we needed at least 82 votes to have a majority. It was going to be close. Meanwhile, Sharon's criminal trial date arrived. It was a Tuesday morning, February 28th, at the 61st District Court on Monroe Avenue. I took the day off work and showed up with Thomas, even though he was not representing me in the criminal case. The prosecutor handling it was an assistant prosecutor named Rachel Kim. I met Rachel about 30 minutes before the hearing. She was in her late 20s, sharp professional. She had reviewed the case file and watched my Ring video. "This is pretty straightforward," she told me. "She took your property, admitted it to the police, and refused to return it. The video evidence is clear. Her defense seems to be that she had HOA authority to do it, but that's not a legal defense to theft. I expect we'll get a conviction, probably a plea deal." "What kind of plea deal?" "Likely she'll plead guilty to a reduced charge, maybe attempted larceny or a local ordinance violation, pay some fines and court costs, and possibly restitution to you for the snow pusher. She probably won't see jail time for a first offense property crime, but she'll have a record." Sharon showed up with her lawyer, a tall man in an expensive suit named Gregory Fowler. He was from some big firm in Grand Rapids, and he looked annoyed to be handling a misdemeanor theft case. They sat on the opposite side of the courtroom. Sharon kept glancing at me with this expression of pure disdain. The judge was Donna Stratton, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s. When Sharon's case was called, both sides approached the bench. Judge Stratton reviewed the file quickly. "Mrs. Winters, you're charged with misdemeanor larceny." "How do you plead?" she asked. Gregory Fowler spoke up. "Your Honor, we believe this is a misunderstanding. Mrs. Winters was acting in her capacity as HOA president to enforce community covenants. She had no intent to permanently deprive Mr. Yarrow of his property." "Counselor, intent to permanently deprive is not required for larceny in Michigan. Taking someone's property without permission is sufficient. Has your client returned the property?" "Not yet, Your Honor, but it's being held pending resolution of an HOA violation." Judge Stratton looked at Sharon directly. "Mrs. Winters, do you have Mr. Yarrow's snow pusher?" Sharon stood up. "Yes, Your Honor, but he was in violation of our community standards." "That's not a legal justification for taking his property. The HOA covenants are a civil matter. If you believed he was in violation, your remedy was to fine him or take him to civil court, not to take his belongings. Do you understand that? Your Honor, I've been HOA president for 6 years, and we've always enforced violations this way," Sharon said, her voice rising slightly. "Then you've been breaking the law for 6 years. Miss Kim, what is the prosecution's position?" Rachel Kim stepped forward. "Your Honor, we're prepared to go to trial on this matter. We have clear video evidence of Mrs. Winters taking the property from Mr. Yarrow's porch." She admitted to police that she took it. She has refused to return it. This is textbook larceny. Mr. Fowler, does your client want to resolve this today? Judge Stratton asked. Gregory and Sharon had a whispered conversation. He looked frustrated. Finally, he addressed the court. Your Honor, Mrs. Winters is willing to return the property today and pay restitution. We would ask that the charge be reduced to attempted larceny with a fine and no jail time. Miss Kim, Rachel looked at me. I nodded slightly. I wanted this over with, and I wanted my snow pusher back. The prosecution is amenable to that, Your Honor. We would ask for restitution of the full replacement value, court costs, and a fine appropriate to deter this conduct in the future. Judge Stratton made some notes. All right, Mrs. Winters, here's what's going to happen. You're going to plead guilty to attempted larceny. I'm sentencing you to pay a fine of $500, court costs of approximately $200, and restitution to Mr. Yarrow of $240 for the snow pusher. You're also going to return the snow pusher to Mr. Yarrow within 24 hours. If you fail to do so, I will issue a warrant for your arrest. Additionally, I'm placing you on 6 months of probation. If you commit any similar offenses during that time, you will face jail time. Do you understand? Sharon looked like she had been slapped. Your Honor, I don't think this is fair. I was just doing my job as HOA president. Mrs. Winters, you committed a crime. Be grateful you're not facing jail time. Do you accept this plea agreement or do you want to go to trial? Gregory put his hand on Sharon's arm and whispered urgently to her. She finally nodded. Yes, Your Honor, she said quietly. Then we're done here. Bailiff, please ensure Mrs. Winters provides her contact information to Mr. Yarrow for return of the property. Next case. We walked out of the courtroom. Sharon and Gregory left quickly without saying anything to me. Rachel shook my hand. Congratulations. You got your property back and she has a criminal record now. That should help with your civil case too. Thank you for handling this, I said. Thomas was waiting in the hallway, looking pleased. A conviction, even for a reduced charge, is huge for our civil case. This proves she took your property unlawfully. We can use this in our lawsuit. That evening, around 7, Sharon's husband dropped off my snow pusher. He was a quiet, defeated-looking man named Harold who seemed embarrassed by the whole situation. He apologized on Sharon's behalf and left quickly. I inspected the snow pusher. It was undamaged, still in perfect condition. I took photos of its return for my records. The next day, I received an email from the HOA board. It was from Linda Patterson and Margaret Hughes. Sharon was not mentioned. The email stated that, effective immediately, Sharon Winters has resigned as HOA president due to personal reasons. Linda Patterson will serve as interim president until the annual meeting in April. There was no mention of the theft, the criminal case, or any wrongdoing. Just a bland corporate announcement. The neighborhood Facebook group went crazy. People demanded to know why Sharon had really resigned. I posted a brief, factual summary. Sharon had taken my snow pusher without permission, been charged with theft, pled guilty to attempted larceny, and been sentenced to fines and restitution. I attached the public court record. Several people thanked me for standing up to her. Others attacked me for destroying a dedicated volunteer. The thread got so heated that the Facebook group moderators locked it. With Sharon gone, I expected things to calm down. They did not. Linda Patterson, as interim president, doubled down on enforcement. She sent out a mass email to all homeowners stating that the HOA would be conducting enhanced compliance inspections, and that any violations would result in immediate fines. It was clear that the remaining board members blamed me for Sharon's downfall and wanted revenge. The enhanced inspection started the following week. Linda and Margaret literally walked around the neighborhood with clipboards, photographing anything they deemed a violation. I got cited for having a small oil stain on my driveway. $75 fine. My rain gutters supposedly had some debris in them. $50 fine. One of my window shutters had a loose screw. $100 fine for inadequate property maintenance. Other homeowners were getting hit too. Robert Martinez got fined because one of his bushes was 6 inches over the property line. Jennifer Kowalski got cited because her house number font was allegedly not the approved style. The fines were flying, and people were furious. Thomas sent another cease and desist letter on my behalf, specifically telling the HOA that any fines against me were retaliatory and would be challenged in court. The civil lawsuit was still proceeding. We now had a trial date set for July, but I was not content to just wait for the civil trial. The annual meeting was coming up in April, and I wanted to make sure Sharon's regime ended permanently. Our grassroots group kept growing. We now had 53 homeowners committed to showing up and voting for new leadership. We needed a slate of candidates to run against Linda and Margaret. Robert Martinez agreed to run for president. He was a quality control manager at a manufacturing plant, organized and fair-minded. Jennifer Kowalski agreed to run for one of the board seats. She was a school teacher, patient and good at dealing with difficult people. We found a third candidate, Alan Bridges, who was a retired accountant and could handle the HOA finances. All three were well respected in the neighborhood and fed up with the current board's behavior. We organized a town hall meeting at a local community center to discuss the HOA issues and introduce our candidates. 72 people showed up, a huge turnout. People shared their stories of HOA harassment. One elderly woman broke down crying, talking about how Sharon had threatened to put a lien on her house because her lawn had dandelions. A young couple described being fined hundreds of dollars for hanging a wreath on their door during Christmas because it was not the approved size. The current board did not attend our meeting, but they heard about it. Linda sent out an emergency email claiming that our group was spreading misinformation and trying to destabilize the community. She accused us of violating HOA rules by organizing without board approval. Thomas assured me there was no such rule and that we were well within our rights. March was a tense month. The civil lawsuit was in discovery, which meant both sides were exchanging documents and evidence. Thomas subpoenaed all of the HOA's records, including meeting minutes, financial statements, and violation records. What he found was shocking. The HOA had been spending money recklessly. Sharon had approved thousands of dollars in landscaping for the common areas, using her brother-in-law's company at inflated prices. The board had voted themselves a monthly stipend of $500 each, which was not disclosed to homeowners, and possibly violated the HOA bylaws. They had also been selectively enforcing rules. Homeowners who were friends with board members got away with violations while others were fined heavily. Thomas filed an amended complaint, adding allegations of financial mismanagement and breach of fiduciary duty. This was turning into a much bigger case than just my stolen snow pusher. We were potentially looking at a complete overhaul of the HOA's leadership and practices. The current board panicked. In mid-March, they sent out a notice saying the annual meeting was being postponed from April to June due to scheduling conflicts. This was clearly an attempt to delay the election and hold onto power longer. But Michigan HOA law required annual meetings to be held within 15 months of the previous one. The last meeting had been in April of the previous year, so they could not legally postpone past June. Our group filed a formal complaint with the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, which oversees HOAs in the state. We argued that the board was illegally postponing the election to avoid being voted out. Lara opened an investigation. While all this was happening, my personal life was getting affected. Work was suffering because I was spending so much time dealing with HOA drama. My girlfriend Zara Sullivan, who I had been dating for about a year, was getting frustrated with how consumed I was by this whole situation. We had a fight one evening in late March. "Yannick, you've been obsessing over this HOA thing for 2 months now. I understand you're angry, but you're letting it take over your life," she said, standing in my living room with her arms crossed. "They stole from me, Zara. They committed a crime. And they're still coming after me with these bogus fines. I can't just let it go," I replied, frustrated that she did not seem to understand. "But you got your snow pusher back. Sharon was convicted. You filed a lawsuit. What more do you want?" "I want justice. I want to make sure they can't do this to anyone else. Do you know how many people in this neighborhood have been harassed by them? That's admirable, but it's not your job to save the whole neighborhood. You're not eating right, you're not sleeping well, and every conversation we have eventually turns into you ranting about the HOA. I'm worried about you." She was right, and I knew it, but I could not let it go. This had become about more than just a snow pusher. It was about holding people accountable, about standing up to bullies who thought they were untouchable. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know I've been distracted, but the annual meeting is in a few weeks, and then the trial is in July. After that, this will all be over." "Will it, though? Or will you find something else to obsess over?" Zara asked quietly. I did not have a good answer for that. She left that night, and we did not talk for a few days. I threw myself deeper into preparing for the annual meeting. Lara investigation concluded in early April. They found that the board had improperly tried to postpone the annual meeting and ordered them to hold it no later than April 30th. They also found issues with the board's financial management and required a full audit of the HOA's accounts. It was a significant victory. The board reluctantly scheduled the annual meeting for April 27th. It was to be held at a local hotel conference room since they expected a large turnout. In the weeks leading up to the meeting, our group campaigned hard. We put up flyers, sent emails, knocked on doors. Our message was simple: vote for change, vote for accountability, vote for fairness. Linda and Margaret fought back. They sent out mailers touting their experience and warning that new leadership would lead to declining property values. They claimed our candidates were unqualified and would mismanage the HOA's finances. They even started a whisper campaign that I was secretly a real estate developer trying to take over the HOA to build commercial properties in the neighborhood, which was completely absurd. The evening of April 27th arrived. Zara and I had reconciled, and she came with me to the meeting for moral support. We got there early. The conference room filled up quickly. By the time the meeting started, there were 113 homeowners present in person, plus another 17 participating via proxy votes. Out of 162 total homes, that meant 130 were represented. It was unprecedented turnout. Linda called the meeting to order. She went through the standard procedural items quickly, clearly wanting to get to the election. When the floor was opened for nominations, I stood up. "I nominate Robert Martinez for president," I said. Jennifer Kowalski stood up. "I nominate Alan Bridges for treasurer and myself for secretary." Several other people made nominations for our candidates. Linda and Margaret were also nominated for their positions. The election was on. Each candidate got 5 minutes to speak. Linda went first. She talked about her years of service to the community, her commitment to maintaining property values and the importance of strict rule enforcement. She never mentioned Sharon or the theft incident. Robert spoke next. He was calm, measured, and genuine. He talked about the need for fair enforcement, transparency in finances, and treating homeowners with respect rather than suspicion. He got a standing ovation from about half the room. The other candidates spoke. Then it was time to vote. Ballots were distributed and collected. A volunteer committee that included Thomas as an observer counted the votes. The room was tense. People talked in small groups, waiting for the results. After 45 minutes, the votes were tallied. Linda stood up to announce the results, looking pale. For the position of president, Robert Martinez received 79 votes and I received 51. Robert Martinez is the new president. The room erupted in applause. Robert stood up, looking overwhelmed but happy. Linda continued. For treasurer, Alan Bridges received 82 votes and Margaret Hughes received 48. Alan Bridges is the new treasurer. For secretary, Jennifer Kowalski received 84 votes and I received 46. Jennifer Kowalski is the new secretary. More applause. We had swept the board completely. Linda and Margaret gathered their things quickly and left the meeting without another word. The era of Sharon's tyrannical HOA was officially over. Robert took over the meeting. His first act as president was to propose a motion to rescind all fines issued to homeowners in the past 6 months, pending a review of whether they were legitimate or retaliatory. The motion passed unanimously. My bogus fines were gone. So were everyone else's. The next few weeks were remarkable. Robert, Jennifer, and Alan immediately started implementing reforms. They conducted the required financial audit and found that Sharon, Linda, and Margaret had misappropriated nearly $37,000 in HOA funds over the past 3 years through inflated contracts with family members and unjustified stipends. They reported the findings to Lara and the Kent County Prosecutor's Office. In mid-May, I got a call from Rachel Kim, the prosecutor who had handled Sharon's theft case. The prosecutor's office was opening a criminal investigation into the financial mismanagement. She wanted to know if I would be willing to testify if charges were filed. I absolutely would. My civil lawsuit was still proceeding. In June, about 3 weeks before trial, Sharon's lawyer reached out to Thomas about a settlement. They wanted to avoid trial. After some negotiation, we reached an agreement. Sharon would pay me $18,000 in damages. The HOA would pay my attorney fees of $12,000, and both Sharon and the HOA would issue written apologies admitting wrongdoing. In exchange, I would drop the lawsuit. I accepted. $18,000 was more than fair compensation for what I had gone through, and the written apologies were important for the principle of the thing. The settlement was finalized in early July. The criminal investigation into the financial mismanagement took longer. In September, nearly 7 months after my snow pusher was stolen, the Kent County prosecutor announced charges. Sharon Winters was charged with embezzlement and fraud. Linda Patterson and Margaret Hughes were charged as co-conspirators. All 3 faced felony charges with potential prison time. Their trials were scheduled for the following spring. I followed the news coverage closely. The Grand Rapids Press ran a big story about the HOA corruption scandal, and it became something of a local sensation. HOA reform became a topic of discussion in the state legislature. Sharon, Linda, and Margaret all eventually pled guilty to reduced charges. Sharon got 6 months in jail plus restitution. Linda and Margaret got probation and community service. All 3 were banned from serving on any HOA board in Michigan for life. Meanwhile, Life in Meadowbrook Heights improved dramatically under the new leadership. Robert, Jennifer, and Alan enacted a homeowner bill of rights that limited the board's power to fine residents without proper notice and due process. They implemented transparent budgeting. They reduced the number of petty rules and focused enforcement on legitimate safety and property maintenance issues. Property values did not decline, as the old board had warned. If anything, they went up. Turns out people were more willing to buy into a neighborhood with a reasonable HOA than one run by tyrants. Zara and I got engaged in December. The HOA drama had tested our relationship, but we came through it stronger. We planned to get married the following summer, and were looking forward to a future in a neighborhood that finally felt like a real community. As for my snow pusher, it still sits on my front porch every winter, neatly stored and completely within HOA regulations. Every time I see it, I'm reminded of that crazy chapter in my life when I stood up to corrupt leadership and won. It was exhausting, frustrating, and all-consuming, but it was worth it. The whole experience taught me a lot. It taught me that HOAs can be forces for good or tools of oppression, depending on who is in charge. It taught me the importance of reading the fine print and knowing your rights. It taught me that sometimes you have to fight battles that seem small and petty because they represent bigger principles. And it taught me that video doorbells are worth every penny. I never thought a stolen snow pusher would lead to criminal convictions, financial restitution, and HOA reform. But that's exactly what happened. Sharon Winters learned the hard way that being HOA president does not put you above the law. She thought she could take whatever she wanted, intimidate homeowners into submission, and face no consequences. She was wrong. These days, I actually enjoy living in Meadowbrook Heights. I attend HOA meetings occasionally, mostly to make sure the new board stays on track. Robert, Jennifer, and Alan have done an excellent job. They treat homeowners like neighbors, not subjects. They enforce rules fairly and transparently. They manage the HOA's finances responsibly. It is everything an HOA should be. Sometimes I run into Harold Winters, Sharon's husband, around the neighborhood. He always looks embarrassed and hurries past without making eye contact. I feel a little bad for him. He seems like a decent guy who just happened to be married to someone who let a tiny amount of power go to her head. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that they separated after Sharon went to jail, though I don't know if that is true. Linda and Margaret both moved out of Meadowbrook Heights within a year of the scandal. I guess the shame was too much. Several of their close friends moved too, the ones who had benefited from selective rule enforcement. The neighborhood is better without them. New families moved in, attracted by the reformed HOA and the tight-knit community we were building. We started having actual neighborhood events, like summer barbecues and holiday parties instead of just compliance meetings. People actually talked to each other, helped each other out, became real neighbors. I think about the whole situation sometimes, especially during winter when I am using my snow pusher to clear the walkway. It all started with such a simple thing, a tool for clearing snow. Sharon probably thought it was just another violation to enforce, another opportunity to flex her authority. She had no idea that this particular violation would be her downfall. The craziest part is that if she had just followed the rules herself, none of this would have happened. If she had sent me a proper notice and given me time to respond, I probably would have moved the snow pusher into my garage to avoid conflict. If she had not stolen it, if she had not lied to police, if she had not tried to cover it up with bogus HOA authority claims, it would have been a minor dispute that got resolved quietly. But she escalated at every turn. She stole my property, refused to return it, got convicted of a crime, and then her whole house of cards came tumbling down when people started looking closely at how she had been running the HOA. Pride comes before the fall, as they say. The legal bills were substantial, even with the settlement covering most of it. Thomas Bradford earned every penny, though. He was professional, aggressive when needed, and genuinely cared about justice. We stayed in touch after the case ended, and he has since handled several other HOA abuse cases inspired by my situation. He told me that HOA reform has become a passion project for him. Officer David Chen got a commendation from the police department for his handling of the case. Apparently, my complaint led to a broader investigation of Sharon's HOA practices, and his thorough police work was instrumental in the eventual criminal charges. He sent me a nice email thanking me for standing up and doing the right thing. My coworkers at the engineering firm where I work thought the whole thing was hilarious and called me the snow pusher guy for months. My boss actually asked me to give a presentation at a company meeting about dealing with difficult people and standing up for yourself. It was weird being celebrated for something that had been so stressful, but also kind of validating. The Ring doorbell camera that captured the whole thing is still installed on my front porch. I have recommended them to probably 50 people since this all happened. You never know when you might need video evidence of someone doing something stupid on your property. In my case, it made all the difference. Without that footage, it would have been my word against Sharon's, and who knows how that would have turned out. I sometimes wonder what Sharon thinks about the whole situation now. Does she feel remorse? Does she think she was unfairly targeted? Does she blame me for ruining her life? I will probably never know. We have not spoken since the court hearing, and I have no desire to reach out. Some bridges are burned for good reason. The neighborhood Facebook group is much more pleasant these days. Instead of arguments about violations and complaints about fines, people post about block parties and recommend local businesses and share photos of wildlife spotted in yards. It is what a community group should be. Zara and I ended up buying a ring for her with some of the settlement money. She joked that Sharon Winters funded our engagement, which is technically true in a weird way. We looked at houses in other neighborhoods while planning our future, but ultimately decided to stay in Meadowbrook Heights. With the new board, it really was a great place to live. The annual HOA meetings under Robert's leadership are actually pleasant. They last about an hour, cover the necessary business efficiently, and end with coffee and cookies. Robert runs them with a light touch, encouraging input but keeping things on track. It is a far cry from Sharon's meetings, which often went 3 hours and involved heated arguments about minutiae. One funny thing that came out of all this was that the HOA actually revised the rules about tool storage. The new rule explicitly states that homeowners can store snow removal equipment on covered porches during winter months without restriction. It is informally known as the Yarrow Rule, though that is not in the official documentation. I am weirdly proud of that. I also became something of a local expert on HOA law and homeowner rights. People from other neighborhoods would reach out asking for advice on their own HOA disputes. I would refer them to Thomas Bradford, or share my story as a cautionary tale about what happens when HOA boards overstep their authority. I gave a talk at the public library about knowing your rights as a homeowner. About 40 people showed up. The Kent County prosecutor, who handled the embezzlement case against Sharon, Linda, and Margaret, used my case as a gateway to the bigger investigation. She told me later that if I had not pushed the theft charges, they probably never would have looked into the HOA's finances. Sometimes one small act of standing up leads to much bigger consequences. Thinking back on it now, the whole thing feels almost surreal. It was just a snow pusher, a $240 tool for clearing snow, but it represented so much more. It represented Sharon's belief that she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. It represented years of accumulated resentment from homeowners who had been bullied and fined unfairly. It represented a community that was ready for change, but needed someone to stand up first. I am glad I was that person, even though it was exhausting and stressful and took over my life for months. Someone had to do it. If not me, then who? And if not, then when? Sharon and her board would have just continued abusing their power, collecting their illegal stipends and making people's lives miserable. The restitution money Sharon had to pay eventually came through, though she paid it in installments over several months. Each check felt like a small victory. The HOA's payment of my attorney fees was particularly satisfying. They had spent years collecting fees from homeowners and fining people for petty violations. Using that money to pay for my lawyer who sued them felt like poetic justice. Winter came around again the following year, and I used my snow pusher without incident. Well, I used both of them actually. I kept the original one Sharon stole and returned, and I also kept the cheap replacement I bought. I figured having a backup was smart. Plus, the cheap one had sentimental value now. It represented the period when I was fighting the good fight without my proper equipment. My parents thought the whole thing was crazy when I told them about it. My dad, who lives in Arizona and has no HOA, could not believe that someone could get away with stealing property and claim it was legal HOA enforcement. My mom worried that I had made enemies in my neighborhood and that I should have just let it go. But when I explained the outcome, how we reformed the entire HOA and stopped actual criminals, they were proud. I framed the written apology from Sharon that was part of the settlement. It hangs in my home office, a reminder of the whole crazy experience. The apology is bland and clearly written by her lawyer, but the fact that Sharon Winters had to admit in writing that she was wrong means something to me. People like her rarely admit fault. The audit of the HOA's finances revealed even more problems than initially thought. Besides the embezzlement, there were missing receipts, undocumented expenses, and evidence of kickbacks from contractors. The total amount misappropriated was eventually calculated at over $60,000. The 3 former board members had to pay it all back as part of their plea deals. With the finances cleaned up and properly managed, Robert, Jennifer, and Alan actually reduced the HOA fees slightly while still maintaining the common areas better than before. Turns out when you are not funneling money to yourself and your relatives, the HOA can run quite efficiently. Who knew? I never did find out who Patricia was, the woman who originally complained about my snow pusher being on my porch. She deleted her Facebook profile after my lawsuit became public, and no one seemed to know her well. I suspect she was one of Sharon's friends who left the neighborhood after the scandal. Good riddance. The whole experience made me much more skeptical of authority in general. I learned that rules and positions do not make people right or trustworthy. I learned that sometimes the people in charge are just bullies who found a legitimate seeming way to push others around. And I learned that fighting back, even when it is hard and stressful, is worth it. Zara and I got married in June at a small ceremony in downtown Grand Rapids, followed by a reception at a winery in the countryside. Several of my neighbors from Meadowbrook Heights came, including Robert, Jennifer, and Alan. We joked about having an HOA-themed wedding with violations and fines as decorations, but we decided that would be in poor taste. Still funny, though. On our honeymoon, I made a promise to Zara and to myself that I would let the HOA stuff go and focus on building our life together. The battle was over. We had won. Sharon was convicted and served time. The HOA was reformed. Justice was served. It was time to move on, and I mostly have moved on. I don't obsess over HOA rules anymore. I don't spend hours researching case law and covenant interpretation. I don't have anxiety dreams about receiving violation notices. Life is peaceful now, the way it should be, but I still check my Ring doorbell footage regularly, just in case. You can never be too careful when it comes to HOA presidents and property rights. Once bitten, twice shy, as they say. The story of the stolen snow pusher became something of a legend in Grand Rapids. A local podcast did an episode about it. The Grand Rapids Press wrote a follow-up article on the 1-year anniversary of Sharon's conviction. I even got contacted by a producer from a true crime show asking if they could feature the story, but I declined. Some things do not need to be turned into entertainment. Robert served as HOA president for 2 years before stepping down. He did an excellent job and left the organization in great shape. Jennifer and Alan continued on the board. New people cycled in and out through democratic elections. The system was working the way it was supposed to. As I write this, it has been almost 3 years since Sharon stole my snow pusher from my porch. 3 years since that video footage changed everything. 3 years since I decided to stand up and fight instead of backing down. Looking back, I would do it all again exactly the same way. Because here is what I learned from the whole experience. You cannot let bullies win just because fighting back is hard. You cannot accept injustice just because it is easier to stay quiet. You cannot let people abuse their power just because they have fancy titles and official-sounding justifications. Sometimes you have to stand up, even when standing up is exhausting and risky and all-consuming. That snow pusher is still on my porch right now as I look outside at the fresh snowfall. It is just a tool, a piece of metal and plastic designed to move snow from one place to another. But it represents so much more to me. It represents justice. It represents accountability. It represents the power of ordinary people to fight back against petty tyrants. Sharon Winters thought she was untouchable. She thought being HOA president gave her unlimited power. She thought she could take whatever she wanted and face no consequences. She learned otherwise. And hopefully, her story serves as a warning to other HOA board members who think they are above the law. As for me, I am just a regular guy who wanted to clear the snow from his walkway in peace. I never asked to become the face of HOA reform in Grand Rapids. I never wanted to spend months in legal battles and community organizing. But when the situation demanded it, I stepped up. And I am proud of that. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, dealing with an HOA that has gone too far, remember my story. Document everything. Know your rights. Stand up for yourself. Get a good lawyer. Rally your community. And install security cameras because you never know when you might need video evidence of someone doing something incredibly stupid. And most importantly, never underestimate the power of a stolen snow pusher to bring down an entire corrupt regime. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places.